So I was blessed to have a friend of mine drop in for dinner, and most of you remember Enrique.
Yes, hi, how are you?
Enrique does a lot of people's taxes. You are an IRS enrolled agent,
That is correct.
and what does that mean?
So pretty much my title, it comes from the IRS. So I'm able to practice all over the world with my certification from the IRS. I can prepare taxes for people all over the world, not just necessarily here in the state of California.
So Enrique and I were talking a couple nights ago, and he wanted to shoot a video. We're gonna have a little dinner later, but tax season just got over with a while back, and there was a lot of reaction from some of the clients and some feedback from your clients, not mentioning any names. But you always have some interesting stories, and you're really, to me, a barometer of what's happening in the economy because you're dealing with people every day, and you're still busy right now.
Still busy.
But what's kind of the feedback you're seeing, which we spoke earlier, people are cutting back on a lot of things. So if you want to elaborate a little bit on what you're seeing in the real world.
So this tax season, I've been doing taxes. This is about 20 years already. I've been preparing tax returns for people. And this past year in particular, when I do taxes for people, I'm always asking them questions about their finances, about where they are traveling to and just the different things that they do throughout the year, just kind of catching up on people. So for the most part this year, I have seen a lot of people, they tell me that they're cutting back a lot, especially when it comes down to eating out, traveling. Some people do travel, but for the most part, they are cutting back. So people who used to do a lot of like casual dining, where they sit down, they tip the waiter, a lot of them are now actually either eating at home more, or they're going to restaurants that are more like Pollo Loco, Taco Bell, Del Taco, McDonald's. They're actually getting a lot of the traffic that people used to go to the casual dining like Red Robin or Applebee's or Red Lobster. All of these restaurants, people are tending to move a little bit downwards now, or they're actually just decreasing their visits.
And so that makes sense because we're seeing the Applebee's, the Boston markets, the Red Lobsters, etc., closing down. And so that makes a lot of sense. So people are either going to fast food or they're hitting those mid-level places less.
Yes.
And it's definitely putting a dent in those profit margins. You also spoke earlier when we were talking about cars. And people not buying cars like they were, and the people who are literally getting raked over the coals.
That is correct. I do have, when I talk to people, they always tell me about their car purchases. I ask them, did you buy a car last year? If they have sales tax that I can deduct on their tax return, or if I can depreciate a vehicle for their business, I will find out. And this past year, I have noticed a decrease in that. A lot of people are just not buying vehicles. They're keeping their vehicles. They're fixing whatever's wrong with them, and they're holding on to them longer. I've just seen good cars now. They last longer, so people are just holding on to them longer. The people who are financing vehicles, even with good credit, I'm seeing that their interest rates are somewhat high, somewhere between like maybe 7 to 9% for real good credit. Anybody that has really bad credit, they're over 20% easily.
And we were discussing one of your clients bought a Nissan and financed this vehicle for 96 months at 24% interest.
Yeah.
This, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is a complete no-no, and literally put $500 down on the car. You do not ever want to do that. Elaborate a little bit on that, why we don't do that, why that is pure insanity, and it just something that you're going to regret for the rest of your life doing.
Yes, so I think that one of the wealth killers here in the U.S. Is car payments. You want to be able to have money to be able to save like he does, like I do. You always want to put money aside, especially if you want to put it either into silver, gold, or some other asset that you can hold on to. Paying a car off every single month, all you're really doing is you're throwing your money away. Most people are not really going to care what you drive at the end of the day. If you need a vehicle, try to get something that's actually within your means And there's a lot of vehicles right now that are being unsold. We can get a real nice vehicle under 10 grand. If you can get yourself a very good, honest mechanic as well, references, get yourself a good, honest mechanic, get yourself a sub $10,000 vehicle. If you need to finance it, no more than 12 months, pay that thing off, drive it until it runs down, and then just work with that. If you can buy yourself a nice luxury vehicle, pay for it in cash.
Now, we calculated this mistake is going to cost about $60,000 over that 96 months
Yes.
for a car that's really worth like $20,000. Complete mistake. And people, I don't know, they have to have something now. They have to just have something new, and it's a huge mistake. Don't jump into anything. The FOMO's over, ladies and gentlemen. This is the time where you really have got to make smart decisions and be somewhat defensive now, because what we're heading into, I think, is going to rival the Great Depression of 1929 that lasted over a decade. So you do not want to be going into this collapse with 96 months of car payments at 24% interest. This is kryptonite. Stay away from it. You spoke about another one, a woman making around roughly $30,000 a year went out and bought a $70,000 Lexus. This is stupidity.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do have, sometimes I run into people that just make really bad mistakes. And it's very hard for me to be, I can give them advice, but if they already did the damage, what can I do? Congratulate them. That's it.
Yeah, enjoy. This is a depreciating asset. I just don't understand it, but there's a lot of people still doing this. And you were telling me right now with what you're seeing, and I have to agree with this, a family with, 2 kids is going to have to make $120,000 a year out here just to live comfortably. And you're probably going to struggle at $120,000 with a family of 4 right now.
Yes, it's correct. I run into a lot of working class families with children. And here in California in particular, if I see a family that's making $120,000 a year, they're still considered poor. I ask them, how much money do you have in your bank? Most people don't have that much money. Even after making $120,000, $130,000, it's very difficult for them to save. There's just a lot of underlying expenses. Insurance has gone up, property taxes has gone up. Everybody's paying over $2,000 a month in rent, sometimes even more than $3,000 a month. They want a bigger vehicle because they have several children. They can't take trips the way they used to.
Yeah.
It's just a really big, how do you say it? Right now, with the inflation the way it is, it's really messing up people's finances. And before we know it, we're really going to run into a financial crisis here. It's just a matter of time.
So, is this the worst you've seen it so far? How does this look compared? Does it have any similarities back to 2008? Are we going to see something like that? Or where are we at right now?
I feel like we're in the cusp of something like that. I do remember back in 2007, 2008, 2009, I was preparing taxes back then. I didn't have as much experience as I do now, but I do see some similarities of people just basically like YOLOing into properties, you can say, where people start FOMOing. They see the properties just go up really parabolic and everybody wants to dive in. People who usually are not homeowners, they want to dive in and buy a home. And I think that we're getting into that area where it's a dangerous time to be purchasing a home.
What about, can you speak about credit card debt? Any issues with clients that you're seeing with credit card debt, where people are becoming more dependent on the credit cards?
Yes, so I do have many clients that use credit cards. There's a lot of my clients that they'll top off a credit card. Let's say the balance is $3,000. They'll do their minimum payment at $150, but then the next month they're back up to over $3,000. Why? Because they are already at their full amount, and even with the interest, whatever they have left, they just spend it because they have nowhere to go. That's all they have. That's their lifeline. And so even with the money that they make, they're just constantly running into a lot of issues. All their credit cards are starting to get topped off. It's very difficult to know. I do have several clients that have charged off credit cards as well, and I feel like I've seen more of that recently.
You were also speaking earlier about people saying, hey, we won't pay this bill, so we can go to Disneyland. And watch my video yesterday
Yeah.
on Disneyland.
Yeah.
50% of the families going to Disneyland right now are going into debt on average, $1,983 in debt to go to Disneyland. So people don't have this money, yet they cannot give up the good time. They are fighting this collapse with credit cards, and they don't want to give up their life, their comfortable life, or their middle class life. They don't want to give up the good times and the fun, so they'll just put it on a credit card at 23, 25, 27%. This is an awful mistake, and you're jeopardizing the safety of your family, your future, everything. Because I mean, this is not going to go away, and people are showing absolutely no control whatsoever. For the most part, I mean, a lot of people. Again, are just cutting something out, not paying one bill so they can go do something else.
Yes, I have seen that. When I ask people sometimes about their travels, there are people that confess to me that they're actually using money that's destined to go to bills to travel.
Wow.
And then they fall behind. They fall behind on their bills. So like I said, they use the credit cards to be able to go on vacation. And then they worry about them later. They want to pay the interest. Well, they pay the interest, but they just they drown.
What is the end game for these people? I mean, what happens when the credit card company says, "Hey, we're cutting you off. You're not paying, or we're cutting your credit line in half because we're worried." What's going to happen to these people when the lifeline is gone? That's my concern. Is when a lot of people aren't getting government subsidies or food stamps. Or the credit cards get shut off, what's going to happen with these people?
Yeah, so I have seen some people that they end up getting loans from third parties sometimes to be able to cover these debts, or sometimes some of them have family members or friends that actually do help them out to get out of debt. But at the end of the day, some of them do have to face reality. I have seen people face reality, and they end up having a cancellation of debt from credit cards. I have seen that somewhat. It's becoming a lot more popular where people will run into agencies that will help them to be able to refinance their credit card debt somehow, or they go and they seek for help regarding those credit cards to be able to consolidate them and to be able to get rid of them, or bankruptcy. I have seen an uptick in that as well.
That's right. You said you have seen more bankruptcies this year.
I have seen several.
You want to speak about that?
Yeah. So I have several clients that just have run out of money. They have nowhere to go. Either whether it be businesses that have made wrong moves and now they're in the point where they have to file bankruptcy, or I have some people that have just over leveraged themselves and they've had to do bankruptcy as well. It's not as common. It's not as common as people would think it is, but it does happen. And I have seen an uptick in bankruptcies, people saying, "Hey, I have to file for bankruptcy." And that's just what happens when people over leverage themselves.
How bad can this get?
I think we're getting very close to seeing something happen. It's very difficult to know if it's going to be 3 months down, 6 months down, a year down, 3 years down.
Right.
But eventually something's going to pop. And when it goes, it's going to go hard.
We were talking a little earlier, comparing it a little bit to 2008, which I think you really can't even compare this to 2008 because we said this is so much bigger than 2008.
It really is.
When we look at inflation, now we're seeing the big uptick in job losses. How about wars that are popping off all over the world now? Taiwan could be happening this summer. Inflation absolutely out of control. The highest in my lifetime, maybe the highest ever. We don't even know what the real inflation numbers are because they mess with the formula so much. But in so many bubbles, so much debt, the deficit's exploding. 80% of the country living paycheck to paycheck, one paycheck. And people, for the most part, a majority of this country misses a paycheck, they're in big trouble. But what's really getting concerning now are the job losses. We're hearing a lot more. They're getting us warmed up for that. It seems like every day, thousands of people are losing jobs. California just lost 10,000 jobs prior to last week. If people don't have a job, what happens to their credit? What happens to their house? What happens to their car? What happens to the credit cards? What happens?
Eventually, some of these people, like I said again, they're going to have to look outside of whether it be selling vehicles, whether it be selling their toys, whether it be downsizing, changes have to be made. So eventually when someone gets to a point where they don't have anywhere to run, they're going to have to start offloading their assets, whatever they have left, and they're going to have to fire sale them.
So we're talking like boats, motorcycles, cars, houses,
Title loans. People do title loans
Oh.
sometimes. Actually, I have ran into a couple people that have done title loans this past year. Or like I said,
What kind of interest?
Oh, it's very high.
Like-
It
like
has to
give
be
us a
probably like
number.
18, 9. No, actually more. Title loans are more like those predatory loans.
Yeah.
So they're like the payday loans pretty much.
These are like 100%.
Over
200%.
100, yeah.
So this is legal loan sharking, basically. And payday loans, same
Payday
thing,
loans.
right? Legal loan sharking. So you don't want to get yourself in a situation like this. And if people, if they're willing to go $2,000 into debt to go to Disneyland, I mean that's scary. Also, property taxes are going up, and people you said are beginning to fall behind on property taxes. What does this lead to?
There's a couple of my clients that they don't have their property taxes impounded or their home insurance impounded. Those people are starting to complain a lot. I do get a lot of people that are falling behind. Here and there, I do have a couple people that they'll fall behind on their property taxes. It's not a very good idea. Property tax penalties are very steep. The home insurance, on the other hand, that's also getting very difficult for some people to get, or it's gone up. Just from 2020, I have seen home insurance premiums really double in some cases for some of my clients. And if you have property taxes and look, let's say you bought a home in 2020, you were used to paying a certain amount of property taxes and insurance. Right now in 2024, that's going to be a lot higher, right? So what's going to end up happening is a lot of these people that they're used for the monthly payment, let's say it was $2,500 a month, maybe right now it's $3,300 a month, but it's not because of the interest rate, it's because of the property taxes and the insurance. It's pricing people out.
What percentage of your clients would you say are working more than one job now?
I do have a lot of clients that some of them, they report their cash income or their side business. There's a lot of people that are doing side gigs right now. It's very common.
So what would you say, like percentage-wise?
I would say out of like my working class clients, I would say probably over 50% of them have a cash business. Some of them, I don't even know. I could kind of tell if I see mortgage interest or how much I can kind of tell what their monthly expenses are. And if it doesn't align with their W-2, then I know that there's somewhere along the line, there's some cash activity.
But what about people that are just working like, hey, I'm working at Taco Bell here, and I'm working, over at this restaurant, or I'm doing real estate, and I'm working at this restaurant. So
very common, common to see 2-3 W-2s in 1 year. It's a very common thing. You'll have someone that has their main job, and then they have like a secondary job. Some of them provide tips, and it helps with subsidize what they need,
How does it look like? How do you compare it to like 5 or 10 years ago? Did you see this 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Like we're over 50% working more than one job?
Oh, yeah. It's very common. It's very common here in California specifically. I'm not sure if in the rest of the United States, but it's very common for people to have multiple sources of income, like multiple W-2s, to be able to subsidize their expenses because everything's so expensive.
So even going 5 or 10 years back, this was happening. So this just tells us that this whole thing didn't just start overnight. Things have been unraveling for years. And we can go back 3 or 4 years ago when I was doing videos of the retail apocalypse. And so the economy didn't just start collapsing yesterday. It's just been like a slow unwind or death by a thousand cuts for many, many years. And I mean, we could go back to 2008 and say that's probably when things really began to really fall apart. And people could argue even before that. But I think for the most part, if we look at what happened in 2008, the amount of money printing, putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, basically 0% interest rates for over a decade, the Fed buying mortgage-backed securities, pumping up this housing market, and then all the quantitative easing that has gone on for well over a decade in this country has caused now a major catastrophe that we're going to have to deal with, and I think it's going to get very ugly.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then you also have to remember there's a lot of phantom income out there. I really do think that there's a lot of phantom income.
What do you mean by phantom income?
So phantom income is that income where people get cash. It's just kind of cash just traded around people, and no one knows about it. It just kind of gets filtered in the economy. So like if I have, let's say I go do a side gig for someone, And then I might work for someone, but then I may have a side gig. Someone pays me $300-400 in cash.
Right.
I use that cash to be able to buy gas for my vehicle, buy groceries and everything. And at the end of the day, it's all phantom. Why? Because it's never being deposited. It's never being reported. It's just going through within the channels, and that money is it's never discussed.
So this is probably a good reason why you never want to see a CBDC in this country, because if they pass CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, they will track every penny you got. That phantom money, that $200 or $300 that you earned mowing lawns last week, or doing a babysitting job, or whatever, a landscaping job, whatever, cleaning pools, whatever, they're going to track it down to the penny. So I think that that's a very, very dangerous. If people cannot make a little extra here and there, I mean, they're trying to do. I mean, there's people out there working 4 jobs at this point, and I think we'd all agree that people now are working more second and third and fourth jobs now than ever before. It may not be new; people have been doing it for a while, but the uptick where people now are forced to do it and barely getting by, I've never seen anything like it. And what do you think? Like, just off the top of my head, I was thinking while we're talking about that, I'm seeing so many people living in one home where we talked about this story numerous times. Sid's old neighbor, there was 13 people living next to Sid at his old house, 13 people, and that was 2 years ago. And I shot videos on it 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago when I began to see all these people moving in, 8 cars in a driveway, people living in garages. This now is continuing to accelerate from years ago. Have you noticed this? I've noticed it a lot in certain areas out here.
Oh yeah. Well, I noticed that happened. Well, I'm not sure what neighborhoods. I think it's specific pockets of neighborhoods. You see that? I know that from the last housing crisis, right now, I'm not sure how prevalent it is, but I remember on the last housing crisis, I did see clients where they would have, their home, every room was a family. So you'll have the driveway with like 7, 8 vehicles, and you'll have like 15 people live. I remember there was one house, there was like six men living in a garage, and then there was another, maybe like 3 families living in the home. And these are homes that were financed during the time when the housing prices were really high back in 2006. All these homes were lost, completely gone. But at the end of the day, people took advantage of it, and what they were doing is they were collecting rent from all these different people. They were pocketing the rent, not paying the mortgage, and everybody ended up getting evicted.
So you got to be really careful now, because there's so many scammers out there, so many con men out there that are going to really prey on struggling people. I see it on the internet. I see it with certain YouTubers who did a lot of pump and dumps, selling these penny stocks, and getting paid to do it behind the scenes, and just conning people into this. And so you got to be really, really careful, because as the economy gets worse, more desperation is going to come out, and more people are going to do whatever they have to do to try to steal your money. And when people are desperate and they're like, well, if I can make some money doing that, they begin to gamble and take chances in doing this stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, be very, very careful. I think this is a time where you better get really defensive and not be gambling. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, right now we have this meme stock craze. I think obviously that's gambling. It's just, through the stock market. You have to be very careful. If you want to put money in that, I'm not against it.
But you got to be willing to lose it.
You got to be willing to lose it.
It's not going to affect your life. Hey, if you can go to Vegas and you want to gamble your money away, I think there's better things you could be doing with it. But that's up to you. If you can afford to lose it, by all means, you're an adult. You can do it. But if you can't afford to do it, like these people going to Disneyland who can't afford to go to Disneyland, and they're spending money they don't have, you're going to put yourself in a very, very dangerous position as this economy gets worse. I mean, to me, this is the time to stack as much cash, tangible assets, pay off the debt. Number one, just get the debts paid off. Being a debt slave heading into an economic collapse is something you do not want to be. Really quick, I don't want this video to go too long, but you're talking about some of your older clients retired doing well versus the majority of people not doing well, who are having a harder time, struggling a bit more than maybe the other 5%. And we said, well, a lot of those older people are in these markets, and
Yes.
you're talking about Nvidia way up. I mean, it's going up, up, and up, and up. It's crazy. The Magnificent Seven carrying most of the stock market, and we were just sitting here talking about. Look, we all know what goes up comes down, and we are overdue for a collapse. We're overdue for a massive correction in these markets. What's going to happen to these older people? I did the video yesterday talking about the Social Security cut. They're talking $325 cut in 2033. They're already telling you. They've already robbed it. What's going to happen to some of this wealth, to these older people who, and somebody wrote me the other day, hey, I'm glad I'm retired. This isn't affecting me. These people are in the market. The biggest bubble we have ever seen in the history of the United States of America, the biggest stock market bubble ever. What is going to happen, or what could possibly happen if this bubble gets pricked? What is going to happen to their wealth?
Yeah, so I have a lot of retirees. Basically, where we're at right now, Palm Springs, Palm Desert, we are full retirees. A lot of the retirees that I have, I would say the good majority of them, they're all in the stock market. They all have a lot of bonds. They all have a lot of stocks. Most of their assets are tied either in a home or in the stock market. There are a lot of clients that do have pensions coming in, but those pensions could go away.
Yeah.
Remember, these people are all tied in the stock market. So,
and the pensions are tied to the stock market.
Exactly. So if the stock market gets pricked, if we start having, a sell-off of all these different stocks and all these different bonds, that could set off something that we've never seen before. That's going to be very, very dangerous.
Bond bubble, stock market bubble, commercial real estate bubble, housing bubble. The bubbles go on and on and on. If one gets pricked and pops, it's going to pop all of them. So be very, very careful out there. So many people are just living in fantasy land, like nothing can happen. Protect yourself, be diversified, pay off the debts, have tangible assets, have some cash. Get out of the system the best that you can, because if the system goes down, and really it's not if, it's when. If you're in this game of Monopoly, or you're at the poker table here, what's going to happen when it goes down? I'll tell you what, the market crashes. You know what crashes right afterwards? Real estate. And we could see a real estate crash that affects the stock market. Who knows what's going to trigger what bubble first? But what we do know is all bubbles burst. What goes up comes down. All markets go through a collapse or a severe correction, and we are long overdue for all this. So we're going to see some very crazy, chaotic times, and I hope everybody out there is at least thinking about this, and thinking about having a plan if this does happen, not having all your eggs in one basket. I'm going to leave it there. Enrique, anything you want to close with?
Well, just like he said, prepare yourself, save, pay off your debt. If you have a mortgage, prepay it as much as you can. Get yourself less debt, more silver, more gold, more cash.
Pay off the house. We were talking about pay off the house.
Pay off the house. If you get a lot of people that say, oh, don't pay off your home because you want to write off the interest. No, don't listen to them. Pay off that property. You don't have to pay it in full. Just give small payments every month. $100, $200. Pay your property off. You're going to sleep better at night. You'll be able to save more. You'll be able to concentrate on things that really matter.
And don't get yourself in trouble buying a car. Too many people are still dealing with the FOMO, gotta have it, and they're just looking at the payment. Oh, I can make the payment. You can make the payment today. Can you make that payment 2 years from now? What if you lose a job? I mean, think about some of these scenarios that you're gonna have to deal with here in the near future. Nobody's immune from losing a job. 25, 30,000 car repos a day happening in America. Sid and I went to the Mannheim auction, 10,000 cars at that auction on the property and outside of the property, and they said we had more here last week, and a lot of these cars are repossessions. So once your car's repossessed, now your credit's being destroyed. You're getting behind on credit cards. Credit's being dinged. Can't pay rent. Credit's being dinged. I mean, what do these people do when their credit's destroyed and they've tapped out on the credit cards? What do they do when they're in the Greatest Depression 2.0? What are they going to do?
Well, actually, the last housing crisis, I had several people that went through foreclosure. Sometimes people are not married, so they'll have the significant other get a home, at a cheaper price, and then they'll dump the other one. They'll ruin one credit to buy the other home.
But it takes 2 credits now to buy a house.
That's true. Someone's credit gets damaged. Actually, so that might end up happening again. I don't know, but I did see that happen quite a bit. Or they'll get a family member that'll buy a home and then they'll transfer back to them later. Either way, I did run into several repos this past month live. Got to see them in person. So it's starting to happen. People are getting repo.
Anyways, we'll leave it there. We're going to have a little dinner. Thank you so much for joining. Any contact number, anything you want to give for anybody out there?
Yeah, so like I said, my name's Enrique Perez. I'm an enrolled agent. I represent people all over the U.S., all over the world. And if you need help, you can always contact me, 760-772-2007. You can call me there. I have helped people through Jeremiah's channel. People have reached out. I've helped them out. They're very happy with my services, and I'm more than willing to help you if I can. I'll give you guidance.
Have a great evening. God bless all of you. God bless America. And comment down below on any of this, what your thoughts are, what you're seeing. Really appreciate it. Talk to all of you soon.
There you go.